All right, we are going to continue on with the tutorial introduction to React, and this tutorial following on the last one is an in-depth or at least introductory level of JSX, and which is the markup of React and some of the virtual DOM. Of course, if you don't know the concept of the virtual DOM, basically it's a performant way for React to track the changes that it would need to render. Um, Instead of drawing the entire document object model, which is actually all of the tags and HTML elements you may have in the browser that actually will be a tree, and the browser will sometimes redraw the tree. In the past, some things with performance in older vanilla JavaScript and HTML, it would you'd see the flicker because it's trying to draw the tree, whereas React is very smart at reconciling and perhaps only updating maybe the bottom leaf, which makes it really, really fast as a framework. So I already went ahead and I ran the npx package manager, node package manager, create React app, which will scaffold out a nice application for us. While I was talking, it had already run. It went and installed all the packages and then dependencies you would need, and then you can see here it's pretty much ready to go. And this is what scaffold is out. Just the basic React app to start from. CLS clears my cache. npm start. Again, just to recap that, this package.json is pretty important. All the dependencies get recorded here. We're using React script start. Now you could run React script start as a CLI to kind of launch this app, but this scripts section just allows you to do some shorthand. You can do some compound, different kind of commands, but for the most part, we're just going to start this app. That's going to go and bundle this up. Make sure you're in the right folder. That's one of the steps there. So when I'm doing dir, I'm checking my current directory. I'm using Windows dir. I have to go one level deep, change directory into that folder, make sure I'm in the right place, and then npm start again. So it needs to be npm node package manager, needs to run the script. It needs to be able to run in a directory that has a package.json, otherwise it doesn't know where to look. So this is going to run create React app. It's going to try to bundle everything using Webpack under the hood, do some, basically taking all the assets of the application and trying to bundle it up. We already talked about Vite.js in another tutorial, which speeds this process up via something called tree shaking, and it basically will shake out all of the dependencies it doesn't need to run, and it's up extremely fast. Eventually, it did kick off and start a development server on localhost. Localhost 3000, you can just click in here and it'll directly take you to the page. Otherwise, the page has already been loaded, and you can see that's our nice initial React page that has been scaffolded out for us. So what we want to do is we want to, similar to the introduction to React, we're going to do the similar thing. We're gonna use Visual Studio Code. I like to create a components folder from which I can then put my components. Simple component. I'll just name it my component. You can use .js extensions for JavaScript or .jsx. Now I have something called Material Theme UI installed as an extension to Visual Studio Code. That's why I'm getting those icons. I like to use JSX just because I get a nice React icon. When you're dealing with many files, it certainly helps just to eyeball it, see where you're at. First thing we need to do is we need to import React from react.com. Now, if we are on older versions, this is required. I believe in newer versions like React 18, you don't necessarily need this import statement. But for now, I'll just include it. And we're going to create a functional component. Function is a keyword from JavaScript. And the nice thing about functional components is that they are like JavaScript functions. And so first of all, I have a functional component. When React scans this file, it'll notice this keyword function. Then it'll, normally when you're writing JavaScript functions, everything is camel cased, meaning, it starts with lower casing and then the hump, right? It's just the uppercase. It's called camel case. And that is usually what the style of JavaScript functions. But in our case, we're going to do Pascal case, which starts with a capital. So when React sees a function that starts with a capital, it will assume that it's a functional component that you're trying to create. And as such, it'll expect it to return something to render. So you can see there, I have a very basic tag, which is HTML. But internally, it's called JSX, which is just JavaScript powered HTML. So I have a very basic tag, and that won't render anything. So I'm just going to put a header, H1, which is a header, hello React, like a hello world. The next thing I need to do is, because I have this component, it's private, because I need to make it public by exporting it using export default to the world, so that it can be consumed and be seen by the application. So as you notice, I'm saving. It's hot reloading, which is great. So I don't have to stop the execution rebuild every changes I make, even if I include some problems in here. Maybe I'll put some bad keys in here, or I don't know, try to mess it up. Eventually, it's ESLint is giving me a bit of a problem. But if I do something that'll affect, and I'll show you in a little bit, maybe when I try to import something wrong, this hot reloader will error out, which is great. I don't have to keep rebuilding. It'll auto build for me. So one of the entry points here, by the way, I know it's in the intro to React, but the index.js is the entry point. I'll just mention it. You can see here it's loading up. We're on React 18, so React DOM is using create root, as opposed to the React 16 legacy is React DOM.render. This is the setup. It's basically going to take your entire application and insert it into the DOM via an element called root. In our public folder, there's an index.html that has a tag called root. So that's all it's doing, right? It's saying get element by ID, that's root, and we're going to mount. We're going to mount the applications, as they call it, via create React root. And when it's mounting, so it's grabbing the root element, and it is actually rendering. I'm sorry. It's actually taking a two-step approach, which is supposed to be more performant, but it does the render via create React root and create root, and it's rendering the app. So that's kind of like our container for our application. And this has some styling in there which we don't need right now. So I'll go ahead and just remove that. It'll recompile, as you saw. So if we go back to our page, it's blank. And what we want to do now is we want to import our component we just built. So because it's a React functional component, it means it's actually stateless. It's a static component. I'll get rid of this. I don't need this. If depending on, you can remove all this just for simplicity. If you're not using this, code, you can just remove it if you wanted to, because we just want to import our my component. And you can see here, IntelliSense is helping me. If I press tab now, it'll do the auto populate the path. So I have a component here. If I tried to do something like this, import, next component, not component, from something I don't have installed right now, but I'll just say components or whatever, some makeup directory, Next.js, and I save that, you can see here my hot reloader failed to compile right away. So it basically is checking and helping me as I'm working and letting me know there's errors. you can see back in the browser, I have a hard error, compilation error. And it's letting me know some information of, what the problem is, which is great because I don't have to do work and then figure this out on compile time. So we have that component, and a very important piece of JSX. You always need to have a parent tag. And what that means is I'll show you first of all how to basically you need a parent tag that encapsulates everything. Because I already have a parent tag, I can easily, and because it's a functional component and it renders JSX, the component itself can be used as a tag. So I just have very simply my component is entered into the DOM, and you can see hello React. Now what I was trying to get at is, let's just say we didn't put this as a child to the div tag. In fact, we had these tags side by side. And then you're going to get the error, common error, adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in the closing tag. And what that's saying is that you can't have two sibling tags without a parent tag. You need some kind of root tag. So in the JSX world, they're trying to help us out. They're saying, you need an enclosing tag. Did you want to use a fragment? So basically what a fragment is if I were to wrap all of this here in a div tag or a paragraph tag, we'll use a paragraph tag. Paragraph tag, and we'll put our child tags within there. There's no need for us to have a paragraph tag, right? We're just trying to get past this error. If I were to use my DevTools and I were to inspect the DOM by just clicking this little arrow to inspect, and I can look at the markup, you can see there what was rendered for our component. You can see the root that we talked about. And then there's a paragraph tag, and that's taking up space in the DOM tree, the document object model tree, just to satisfy this React error we had with adjacent tags. Because of that, React gives us a nice little React.fragment, just for this kind of scenario when we need to get past that error. React is not defined, of course. Okay, so then now if we're directly using React, we need to import React from React, which is what it's basically looking in the node modules for the library package called React. That gets past the error. If we go back and inspect, you can see now that that paragraph tag is obviously gone, but the fragment doesn't show up in the document object model. So we bypassed the error, but without polluting the tree. And then React.fragment is very explicit, but there's a shorthand form, which if you didn't see it before, it's kind of confusing. It's kind of like this open close bracket, which doesn't exist in HTML. This is a React specific syntax. Again, HTML is what the browser recommends. The browser knows standard. JSX is specific to React with some new tags and some new attributes, mixed JavaScript powered to allow under the hood React to do a lot of different things. So that fragment, again, if you look at it, it doesn't matter if you're using React.fragment or the shorthand. So what do we want to do next? We have that component there. It doesn't necessarily do too much. It's rendering out a nice static output. So if we go back to this guy, I mean, we can do some different things. You could, in fact, take an element and assign it. So I can do some JavaScript here, and I could say, okay, well, I have an element, and I'm gonna call it hello world. And instead of saying hello React, I can output that element, but not as you might think, just to say hello React element. Actually, this might work. You never know with coding. Actually, that did work. I was thinking I needed to wrap it in an expression, but actually that's fine. It just evaluated it and it parsed it and returned it. So you could break up your fragments in that way. You can create functions that return fragments if you wanted to break up some complex complexities in your code. I was thinking of expressions. So what that means is if I had, say, first name or name, Mike, and I wanted to use this in my JSX, you could say, I'll have a paragraph and I'll have hello, and then I need to use that interpolation, which is the mustaches, the braces. Basically, React scans this component. It's going to scan everything in the JSX. When it hits those braces, it's going to try to evaluate what's inside of it. It could be an event handler or a function call, or it could be something like 1+1. You could actually do that one if you wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but just to show that you could do that. Or you can evaluate. You can force a variable to be evaluated, so it'll inspect name. Where is name defined? There it is. What's the value of it? It's Mike, and it should. I'll put that out there like that, so you can see hello. It's not very. There's not much style to it. Hello to Mike. And why did I do this? Because I have it as a paragraph. Let's put it back to a header in H1 just so it's a little bit bolder. And there you go. So that's called a JSX expression. We talked about JSX element, and now there are some attributes on the tags. HTML has attributes for elements, and JSX also will support this. So if you had a link, which is an href, it'll still satisfy the React render. So if I had a link, const link is now I'm going to give that old school tag, which is the href tag that we've used so many times before, and we'll put Google for now.com. You close the tag and you need to visit Google. So we have a few things going on here, and if we were to try to now output this tag, if we were to put it side by side, actually we'd need our interpolation for this one, and we could try to output this, but then what you're going to happen is you're going to run into an issue with we need to actually work this out a little bit better here. We need enclosing tags around this. We can't just, or can we? Let's just see here. We need a semicolon. What's it barking at me for here? I'm just going to put this out here as a link. Let's see that actually works here. So now we have the link. Okay, that did work. So if I click it, it redirects to Google for me. Nice. So it was barking at me for some reason. And I'm curious now, if I wrap this in a div tag and I put the link in, so now it's kind of going to go inspect my fragment. So I have a parent JSS tag and link. Will that bark at me or will that satisfy it? The render, you can see there, it's kind of small. It's actually doing what you would expect, I guess, is now because it's wrapped in a fragment or a tag, it's thinking it's a child of that tag. So if you had a paragraph, whatever's inside would be the text. So if I want it to actually evaluate and render what I need those braces to force it to do that evaluation. So now when it hits link, it'll realize it's not per se a text. It's actually some fragment or some other JSX it needs to look at. So therefore it will actually inspect that and resolve whatever link was. Same with element now. I think I need to do the same thing. If I want to output element, I need it in the braces as well. So you can see now I have two fragments that are being outputted. So I mean, with JSX and mixing JavaScript in this way, things get a little, like it's a little, React gets a little bit picky in different things that you want to look at. If we wanted to go a little bit further with the attributes, a couple little differences with React is, let's just say we had and if you don't know, yes, we had a handler or some kind of event handler. We could do something like this in a functional component: function handle click, and we'll get back to the shorthand in a minute. And all this is going to do is call the alert hello hello clicked, whatever I want to call this, clicked. And what is this barking at here? A function that has no parameters. It's basically, its length is telling me that name is not used. It's declared but never read. We don't need this anymore. This is just my linter. It's just kind of letting me know, hey, you defined this method, but it's never read. And we would like it to be. What would I like to do? So there's a function, and again, I'll get back to a shorthand version of what we can use with JSX and make this a little bit different syntax. But let's just say we had a button tag now in our JSX, and it says click me. Of course, it doesn't have any event handlers, so right now there's a button that is not doing anything. We need to wire it up, so we need to use a click handler, and we need to fire an event. Internally, HTML and JavaScript will know about these events. They're built into the window and built into the browser. And if you've worked with any bit of JavaScript or any HTML, you know that an element like a link or a form or a button has events built into it. Normally in HTML, you would have a click handler. You can see already my IntelliSense is trying to help me. Normally with HTML in JavaScript, there's this lowercase on click. But one of the differences with JSX is we need to camel case this. If we don't, it'll throw an error during compilation. So we need an on click. And you can see I automatically just I press return and it auto-filled. It's already wrapping it in those braces. It's going to evaluate whatever you're looking to pass here. I want to pass handle click as that method call, so that when you click it, it's going to fire off an alert. But you already notice there's a problem here, is that when I'm refreshing, it's firing, and it keeps firing. When I go to click it, it's not working. What's happening here is when the page is rendered by React is scanning through here, hitting the my component tag, looking at its return JSX, and it's evaluating everything. It's evaluating the button, and it's evaluating what is inside this click handler, and right away there's a function invocation, meaning it calls it right away. So we don't want that. We don't want to invoke the function right away. We want to defer the execution of it and just basically wire it up. You're going to pretty much, like an old school C++, add a pointer to it. We're basically saying when somebody clicks it, this is wired to this event handler or this function called handle click. So now if we go back and we refresh this, that handle click will not fire until we trigger the event, until the user actually says click me, and then that actually fires. So that was a JSX element that has a click handler. One other thing I can mention here, maybe another interesting one, is if you had on the same button or any other element, you wanted to add a style to it. Normally in CSS, you would apply that style with a class. It won't work in that way, because class is actually a reserved keyword in React, because you have a concept of class components. But if you wanted to use classes in your markup, you would have to use class name. That's actually a very minor but important uh, distinction about attributes. Camel cased, on click needs to be camel cased, class needs to be class name. There's a few other ones as well, but as we get deeper into JSX, we'll learn a little bit more about those. But for the most part, we looked at JSX expressions, JSX elements, JSX attributes. We looked at fragments, and we looked at some of these differences that JSX has to HTML. We'll go further in the next tutorial,